Sendil Mullainathan is a Harvard economist. Eldar Shafir is a Princeton psychologist. In 2013, they published research that should change the way every person in the world thinks about financial struggle. They studied sugarcane farmers in India. These farmers receive approximately 60% of their annual income in a single payment immediately after harvest. Before harvest, when money is scarce, they face genuine financial stress. After harvest, when money is suddenly abundant, the stress resolves. Same farmer, same brain, same intelligence. Mullainathan and Shafir administered IQ and cognitive function tests to the same farmers before harvest and after. Before harvest, when money was tight, the farmers scored approximately 13 IQ points lower than they did after harvest. When money was plentiful, 13 points. That is the cognitive difference between being classified as having superior intelligence and being classified as average. And it was not caused by the farmers becoming smarter or stupider. It was caused by the presence or absence of financial stress, consuming the cognitive bandwidth that would otherwise be available for complex thinking. This finding, replicated in multiple contexts with different populations across different types of scarcity, is one of the most important insights in modern behavioral economics. And its implications for anyone managing money under financial pressure are profound. Scarcity does not just feel bad. It makes you worse at the thinking required to escape it. This video covers what that means specifically, how it operates in everyday Canadian financial life, and what the abundance mindset actually is. Not as motivational language, but as a specific cognitive state with specific, learnable financial behaviors. Mullainathan and Shafir's central insight is this: scarcity, whether of money, time, food, or social connection, captures attention in a way that is both automatic and involuntary. When you are financially stressed, your mind keeps returning to the financial problem. This is not a character weakness. It is the brain doing exactly what it is designed to do, allocating cognitive attention to the most urgent, threatening issue in the environment. The problem is that cognitive bandwidth is finite. The mental resources consumed by financial worry are not available for other cognitive tasks: long-term planning, impulse control, complex decision-making. The very capabilities most needed to navigate financial difficulty are precisely the ones most impaired by financial stress. The bandwidth tax, in specific terms, Mullainathan and Shafir estimate that financial worry imposes a cognitive tax equivalent to losing a full night of sleep. People operating under financial scarcity are functioning, cognitively, as if they are significantly sleep-deprived. Not occasionally, but continuously, for as long as the scarcity persists. A person managing financial stress is simultaneously making more impulsive decisions, reduced impulse control; planning less effectively for the future, reduced executive function; making more arithmetic errors when dealing with numbers, reduced fluid intelligence; more likely to make the specific financial mistakes, payday loans, late fees, missed payment deadlines, that make the financial situation worse. The cruel irony of scarcity. The behaviors most associated with poor financial outcomes, short-term thinking, impulsivity, focus on immediate needs at the expense of long-term planning, are not causes of scarcity. They are symptoms of it. The causal arrow runs in both directions. Poverty causes the behaviors that extend poverty, and the behaviors extended poverty causes further poverty. The Canadian context, in a country where 41% of workers are within $200 of financial insolvency monthly, as covered in the shocking statistics video, a significant proportion of the Canadian workforce is operating under the specific cognitive impairment that financial scarcity produces. Not because they are less intelligent or less capable than more financially secure Canadians. Because the cognitive tax of their financial situation is consuming the bandwidth they would otherwise use to improve it. This is not a reason for resignation. It is a reason for targeted, specific intervention, building systems and environments that reduce the cognitive load of financial management rather than demanding more cognitive capacity from an already taxed system. Here is the vault, the specific scarcity behavior that keeps people in the cycle, even when their income increases, and why it is almost universally unrecognized until it is named. Tunneling, the cognitive narrowing that scarcity produces. Mullainathan and Shafir use the metaphor of a tunnel to describe what scarcity does to attention. When you are in a tunnel, you can see what is ahead of you with great clarity. The immediate problem, the urgent need, the deadline bearing down. What you cannot see is everything outside the tunnel. The peripheral opportunities, the long-term consequences of current decisions, the resources available just outside your immediate focus. Financial scarcity creates tunneling. The person who is $300 short on rent this week sees the rent problem with extraordinary clarity. What tunneling prevents them from seeing, the long-term cost of the payday loan they are about to take to cover it, the subscription they are still paying that they forgot about, the opportunity to renegotiate a bill, the small, consistent saving that would prevent this situation next month. Tunneling is not stupidity. It is the brain's adaptive response to urgent threat. The same mechanism that helps a person under physical threat focus on survival. In a financial emergency, the narrow focus of tunneling is the brain working exactly as designed. The cost is the loss of peripheral vision on everything that is not the immediate crisis. The borrowing from the future trap. Tunneling on the immediate problem leads directly to the most consistent and expensive scarcity behavior. Borrowing from the future to solve today's problem. A payday loan resolves this week's crisis and creates next week's crisis plus interest. A credit card minimum payment keeps the account current and grows the balance that will need to be resolved later. A BNPL plan covers this month's grocery bill and adds next month's payment obligation on top of this month's. The buy now, pay later, borrow now, pay later structure is the financial equivalent of tunneling. It solves the immediate, visible problem while creating a future problem just outside the tunnel's view. The devastating consequence: each borrowing from the future transaction makes next period's scarcity worse. The payday loan resolves this week, but leaves next week with less money than this week, plus the fee. Next week's shortage is now larger than this week's. The tunneling response: borrow from next week to cover next week's shortage. The cycle tightens with each iteration. This is why people in genuine financial scarcity can remain in scarcity despite income that should theoretically be sufficient to resolve it. The borrowing from the future mechanism creates obligations that consume future income before it arrives. And the cognitive narrowing of tunneling prevents clear-eyed assessment of the accumulating future obligations. The specific Canadian manifestation. A 2026 report noted that among Canadians who use payday loans, a significant proportion are repeat users returning for a new loan within 2 weeks of repaying the previous one. This is not a choice made by people who do not understand the cost. It is the tunneling trap in operation. The immediate crisis is so visible and pressing that the long-term cost of the resolution mechanism is genuinely difficult to weigh clearly. Here is where most discussions of abundance mindset go wrong. The term has been absorbed into motivational content culture in a way that makes it sound like magical thinking. If you just believe in abundance, money will flow toward you. This is not what the research supports. It is not what this video means, and it is, frankly, condescending to people operating under genuine financial constraint to tell them that believing differently will fix the problem. The abundance mindset, properly understood, is a specific cognitive orientation, not toward money magically arriving, but toward possibilities, options, and the future. It is the orientation that allows long-term planning to feel meaningful rather than futile. It is the cognitive state that the scarcity research shows is associated with better financial decision-making, not because it makes you smarter, but because it reduces the bandwidth tax that scarcity imposes. What the abundance mindset is. Specifically, 1. The belief that the financial situation is improvable through deliberate action. This is not the belief that money will appear from nowhere. It is the belief that specific, learnable behaviors will produce different outcomes over time. It is, in Carol Dweck's framework, the financial application of the growth mindset. The situation is not fixed. Skills are developable. Effort produces results. The specific financial consequence of this belief. People who hold it are more likely to invest time learning about money, more likely to implement financial systems, and more likely to persist through early setbacks without concluding that the situation is hopeless. 2. The capacity to consider the future without it feeling threatening. Scarcity produces present bias, the cognitive tendency to heavily weight immediate rewards and costs relative to future ones. This is why a person under financial stress is more likely to take a payday loan, immediate relief, future cost, than to suffer immediate discomfort for future benefit. The abundance orientation allows the future to feel less threatening and therefore more worth planning for. The emergency fund is only worth building if the future feels like it will exist and matter, a belief that is difficult to hold under acute scarcity. 3. Seeing financial decisions as choices rather than constraints. The scarcity mindset experiences most financial decisions as forced. There is no option. This is what must happen. The abundance mindset recognizes that every financial decision is a choice, with trade-offs, and that the choice is within the decision-maker's control. I cannot save this month is a scarcity statement. I am choosing to spend this month's money on X rather than save it is an abundance statement, and it reestablishes agency. What the abundance mindset is not. It is not ignoring real constraints. A person earning $35,000 in Toronto is constrained. Those constraints are real and not resolved by believing differently. The abundance mindset operates within real constraints but refuses to define the self by them. It is not optimism that denies difficulty. It is agency that persists despite it. The scarcity and abundance mindsets are not just internal states. They produce specific, observable, different financial behaviors. Here is the comparison that makes the distinction actionable. On financial information, scarcity avoids financial information because it is threatening. Knowing the credit card balance, the true amount of debt, the actual savings rate, all produce anxiety. The avoidance reduces immediate stress but increases long-term vulnerability. Abundance seeks financial information even when it is uncomfortable, because the orientation is toward the ability to improve the situation. Clarity is more useful than comfort. On mistakes, scarcity treats financial mistakes as evidence of being fundamentally bad with money. A missed payment, an impulse purchase, a bad investment decision confirms the identity. This triggers shame, which reduces engagement with financial management, which makes the situation worse. Abundance treats financial mistakes as feedback. A missed payment is information about a system that needs a fix, not evidence about character. The response is practical. Automate the payment. adjust the system, learn from the outcome. On other people's financial success, scarcity experiences other people's financial success as evidence that there is less available for you. Zero-sum framing. If they have more, you have less. This produces resentment and comparison-driven spending, attempting to maintain social equivalence. Abundance experiences other people's financial success as evidence that financial improvement is possible. Non-zero-sum framing. Their success does not diminish your potential. This produces curiosity about what they did and how it might apply. On starting financial change, scarcity waits for the perfect conditions before starting. More income, less debt, a better moment. Starting feels pointless if the amount is small or the situation is difficult. Abundance starts now with what is available. $50 per month is a start. $25 is a start. The consistency of starting matters more than the size of the start, because the identity shift that comes from being someone who invests or saves, even modestly, changes the relationship with money in ways that eventually lead to larger action. On financial setbacks, scarcity, a financial setback, unexpected expense, job disruption, market decline, confirms that financial security was always an illusion, and resets the person's engagement with financial planning. Abundance, a financial setback, is a specific event with a specific response required. The emergency fund was built for exactly this. The plan has room for disruption. The setback is real and handled, not evidence that the whole enterprise was futile. The scarcity mindset is not a permanent state. It is a response to conditions. And while the conditions may not change overnight, the cognitive orientation toward those conditions can shift deliberately. Here is the specific sequence. Step 1. Build the minimum viable buffer first. The research is clear. The abundance mindset is significantly easier to access when there is financial slack. Even a modest buffer, $500 in a separate account, measurably reduces financial anxiety and widens the cognitive tunnel. The emergency fund is not just a financial tool. It is a cognitive tool. It is the specific intervention that creates the slack that makes clearer financial thinking possible. Build it first. Before investing. Before optimizing. The $500 buffer is the bridge from scarcity thinking to abundance thinking. Step 2. Stop borrowing from the future for current problems. Identify every current borrowing from the future obligation. BNPL plans, credit card minimum payments only, payday loan cycles. Each one is consuming future income before it arrives. The priority after building the minimum buffer is stopping the leaks. Paying above minimum on the highest interest debt, canceling BNPL plans, eliminating the payday loan cycle with a small emergency fund. Each forward obligation eliminated widens the tunnel by one future payment. Step 3. Reframe one financial statement per week from scarcity to abundance. Specifically, when you notice a scarcity financial statement, I can't afford it. I'll never pay this off. There's no point trying. Reframe it deliberately, not into false optimism, into agency. I am choosing not to spend on this right now. I am making progress on this debt. I am starting with what I have. The reframe does not change the facts. It changes the relationship to the facts, which changes the decisions made in response. Step 4. Treat one financial decision per month as a learning experience rather than a verdict. When something does not work, a budget category blows, a savings commitment is missed, an investment decision disappoints, apply the abundance response. What does this tell me about the system? What specific adjustment is needed? What would I do differently? This is fundamentally different from the scarcity response, which treats the same event as evidence of permanent incapacity. Step 5. Anchor to a future self with specific financial characteristics. The abundance mindset requires a future worth planning for. Make it specific, not vague. I want to be financially secure. Specific. I am someone who has $15,000 in emergency savings and no credit card debt by age 32. Specific futures are plannable. Vague futures are not. The specificity creates a planning target that makes present sacrifice legible. You can see exactly what you are building toward. Let's come back to where we started. The same farmer. The same brain. 13 IQ points difference. Not from intelligence, but from the presence or absence of financial stress consuming cognitive bandwidth. That finding is not a statement about farmers in India. It is a statement about every human brain under financial pressure, including yours and including mine. The scarcity mindset is not a character flaw. It is not laziness or irresponsibility. It is the documented, replicated, neurologically grounded consequence of financial stress on a finite cognitive system. And it is escapable, not through motivation, not through willpower, not through better information delivered to a brain that is already at capacity, through the specific targeted interventions that reduce cognitive load, the $500 buffer that widens the tunnel, stopping the borrowing from the future cycle that makes next period's scarcity worse, the reframe from I cannot to I am choosing, the specific future self-worth planning toward. The abundance mindset is not the belief that money will flow if you think positively. It is the cognitive state where the future feels worth planning for, where financial decisions feel like choices rather than constraints, where mistakes feel like feedback rather than verdicts, and where other people's financial success feels like evidence of what is possible rather than evidence of what you lack. The research shows the path from one to the other is not a personality transformation. It is a series of specific, practical steps, starting with the buffer that makes everything else possible.